Welcome to the Journos on PLZ Soccer. I'm Alison McConnell, joined by Hugh McDonald and Gordon Park. So it's International Week this week. We'll be discussing all things Scotland. We'll be looking at David Gray's situation at Hibs and whether or not there are enough young players emerging through our academies into first team teams. First up, however, it's Scotland, Croatia, Friday night at Hampden. Hugh, your thoughts on that one?
It's become this whole group's become a bit of a trudge, hasn't it? And it's just like, well, I mean, I know Carver the other day was talking it up. We can still finish this and stuff as this, but I think the general feeling is let's get this over without any more bloodshed and try and regroup for a World Cup qualifying campaign. And really, there's no shame in this. It's a Group A. It's the top teams. But after coming at the end of, really disappointing European Championships, it's another it's been a bit of a slog, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Did you agree with John Carver? Are Scotland narrowing the gap on top teams?
No. I'm sorry, but he has to dress it up somehow. But I remember the days when I ran home from school to see the Evening Times, to see the Scotland squad, and I would look, it'd be top heavy at the top with strikers and real talented players. And I hate to go back to the halcyon days, but I look at the squad that's going to assemble for this game. I look at the three forwards that we've listed. Three forwards in the squad. And I think it tells you where we are. We're not closing the gap in the top nations because we don't have the quality at the top end of the pitch that the top nations have. And it's as simple as that. It's the personnel that you have at your disposal. And I look, we've got Lawrence Shankland, we've got Lyndon Dykes, and me, Tommy. And I just don't think, I think that's where we are.
Does it make a difference, the players that are coming back in? So Stuart Armstrong's back in the squad, John McGinn's back in, Jack Henry will be back in. Does that make a bit of a difference?
Well, it does, but also tells a story as well, because you're bringing back Stuart Armstrong, who was, in the old expression, was out with the washing at one time, so that tells you, that he's got to recycle to, and there's not that many trying to chap the door down. I mean, I know there would be a big call for, why bring back Stuart Armstrong when you can play Lennon Miller, but there's reasons for that, there's good reasons for that. So I think that's another indication of where we are, that there's not, if you look at a Scotland squad, for example, and Gordon's pointed out, look at the three we've got at centre forwards, and there's question marks over three. Lyndon Dykes has had a hard shift and has had a lot of injuries. He does offer us some. Lawrence Shankland's not been great this year. Tommy Conway's pacey but young and still got a bit to go. And then you say, well, who should we get in then? We get them out and get a new breed in.
Where do you go?
Well, where'd you go? There's not. I mean, we don't want to go back to sort of Scotland Daz or Mackie Scotland Granda conversations. But I mean, I can remember things like Andy Gray, who was not only Footballer of the Year in England, but Young Footballer of the Year in England, didn't get in a Scotland World Cup squad. He didn't get in a 20. Andy Gray, and anybody who knows how good he was at the time, and he didn't get in it because there was other options. I think the options they chose to leave Andy Gray out were wrong. But what I'm saying is there was other options. I don't think there's options now. I mean, if you looked at that front three now, who would you say, oh, well, he should definitely be in?
I think that's a big problem, is where the goals come from.
You tell the truth, and the truth sometimes is difficult to hear. Scotland's record before the Portugal game was on par with San Marino's over the last year. We're in the back of a run which would have cost most managers a job. On the back of a European Championship, which should have cost a manager his job. You can talk about real talent and lack of, but for John Carver to come out and paint a picture which is completely polar opposite of what the reality is. One draw against Portugal at Hampden, on the back of an absolute shambolic last couple of years, is where we are. We're not up against the better nations are able to take that next step to match them. We're barely putting our head above water. And our record has been embarrassing. It should have cost the manager his job.
You were obviously out working at the Euros in Germany over the summer. Were you surprised that Steve Clarke remained in post after it?
Well, here's the thing. I wasn't surprised that he remained in post because I know the machinations of the SFA and the imperatives there. If you ask me another question, should he stay in post? For me, I'd have said no. I've said, this would have been a great time for me to go. But I knew why he would stay on. One, because there was no drive in the SFA for a variety of reasons, one of which would be financial, but one of which I think would be gratitude for getting to two tournaments. There was no drive. There was nobody in there going, oh, we'll have to get rid of this manager, so he was safe then. Then, of course, the manager himself, there was no drive for him to leave. He was content, obviously, where he was. But certainly I felt, you know, at the end of it, I think with the bizarre, when the press conference, when his first press conference when he came back was appalling. I mean, and I don't use that.
Ever known, how do you get away with saying I've earned the right?
Also, too, I think what you're referencing is when he said who's criticising.
A journalist asked him, you know, well, there's been who's criticising. I've talked to four guys.
John Carver.
No, but Steve Clarke doubled down, and I went, well, I talked to 1,743 Scotland fans when I was over there, and see by the end, they were raging. At the beginning, they weren't. They took. By the way, as I say, I was at every city. I didn't go to the games. I was in the fan zones. So I was at every fan zone at a game. 5-1 pumping from Germany. Alison, very philosophical. Nobody's happy, but we'll take it. It's Germany. She's 70 minutes standing in the Stade Park in Stuttgart. Scotland v Hungary, 70 minutes gone, it was rebellion.
Correct me if I'm wrong, how many shots on target did we get? Right now,
it's not even, I think for a lot of people the frustration was the lack of changes within games. You had like James Forrest out, who had a fantastic end to the season for Celtic, maybe hadn't done much until the last 6 weeks of the season, came in and arguably helped drive Celtic
to the title,
the title and the Scottish Cup. He wasn't utilised. I think there was a frustration there for a lot of observers that it wasn't just stayed or stale, but the fact was it remained so throughout the duration of games. Is that a valid criticism?
Absolutely, 100%. And to be given the indulgence to go 6 weeks or whatever it was and not even face up to a camera, other than his post-match after the Hungary game.
That's an interesting point too, Hugh, the length of time that elapsed before there was any, let's have the post-mortem over.
Accountability is paramount. Especially when you've pitched something that doesn't materialise. What did he pitch before it? We'll do better. We've learned from our mistakes at the previous Euros. We'll do better. When it's so dramatically worse, you have to really take accountability and responsibility for that.
Centre half as well could be an issue.
Yep.
Over the next couple of games. So it's Croatia on Friday and then it's Poland.
Poland in midweek, on Monday.
Sorry, Monday. So is that another headache? Do you think?
Yeah, I think he's got. As I say, this one's one of these two games generally are, you know, pull a duvet up over your head and let's get this over. Well, I mean, because and they've got to say this. Yeah, we could still qualify and all that, but they won't. I mean, you just have to look at stats. By and large, in this group, Scotland struggle to score a goal a game and lose 2 a game. That's what they do, you know. So if you lose 2 a game, you basically have to score 3 to win. I can't see Scotland scoring 3 goals against very many teams, but certainly not teams of a Group A calibre. And what they've got to do at the moment is they've got to have a look at what they're going to do in World Cup qualifying. Because if we think this is tough, World Cup qualifying is good. I mean, it's almost the unreported story of how tough it's going to be for European teams to get to the World Cup.
Can I ask you a question? Sorry. I see European teams across the board flooded with teenagers. I see them all excelling and given the platform to play. You talk about Lennon Miller. Surely these are games for Lennon Miller to go and participate in the games that matter. Because in the dearth of quality we have at that age, he's certainly one that can go and make that step, surely.
I think it might be a bit premature. I have to be honest and say I have seen him and I think he's a fantastic player. I'm excited by him coming through. I think he will be a player that will be on the Scottish scene for a long time to come. I don't know that it is maybe the right time to put him. I just wonder maybe it puts an awful lot of pressure. Bringing a teenager into a team, it's not won a game for 8 games without a win. Bringing a teenager in and all of a sudden you become the saviour of this team, the focal point then turns on to, you're not bringing somebody into a winning team.
Point. Right, I get what you're saying, and you got to either sink or swim. Put them in. What's the harm? What's the harm? I see other nations doing it abundantly. We don't do it.
I think the thing with Miller is that he's trying to get into a position where actually, in if you talk about three areas of the team, defence, midfield and strikers, he's trying to get in an area we're strong.
It's the strongest
But
part of
you
the
know,
team.
he would, to me, and he wouldn't start. I would definitely have had him carrying the bags though. And I think it was Strachan a couple of times when he had the team. He was inviting young boys along, even not even in the squad.
Not in the squad, but just for the experience of being in and out of the
Brown
squad.
took Hamper boys,
Yeah.
who all significantly, some of them went on to have decent, I mean, that kind of grounding, that kind of experience.
I think a lot of
yeah,
domestic managers do that as well for like Champions League games and stuff. Maybe take a couple of kids.
Bring it and get them involved in what it takes to be in it. I mean, if you talk to anybody that's made it in a top team, you know, if you talk to say somebody like Aidan McGeady, that came through at Celtic, and he was always going to come through, he was a prodigy. But Martin O'Neill throwing him into training with Lennon and Thompson and Hartson and Sutton, and seeing what it was required at that level, which was totally different to anything he even thought would. He didn't realise just like, not only it was quicker, stronger, but it was brutal.
You're dealing with big personalities as well.
You're dealing with men that if you give the ball away in a training session and Neil Lennon's next to you, it's slaughtered, you know.
I remember Jim McLean at Dundee United. There was always two young players assigned to go into the dressing room to get the studs changed and signed chin guards and towels and all that. And I was that kid for a European tie. It was a Wednesday night against a Polish club. And I remember after the game, United had lost. Me, Jim came into the dressing room and kicked the door open and all that. And I sat in the corner trying to be invisible. But that experience, men getting torn apart.
The reality of
It
first
shocked
team
the life
football.
out of me. But it's a hardening up and you realise, so this is what it's like at the top level.
But I think naturally a lot of managers, I think Steve Clarke would admit he was one of them, would be more prone not to introduce. I think the Doak thing was interesting because it took a while for Doak to get in, and Doak was in a position where, not like Lennon Miller's in, where, you know, he's up against McTominay and that time McGregor and Gilmore and McGinn and Christie, Premier League class players. Doak was up against, was trying to make an entry into somewhere where you say, listen, just roll the dice in this one. I mean, we're not throwing out Lewandowski to give him, you know what I mean? We're not England. We're saying, well, Cole Palmer can't he play? We'll bring it, or you know, Saka's not coming because we're in a position where, do you know what? We're calling up Lewis Morgan, and I'm no disrespect to him, but he's coming in for the cold. Why not we just go with, I know there's injuries at the time, but why don't we go with Doak? Let's go down the Doak line, give him a shot, no pressure on Satan, just come on and run at these people, blah, de, blah, de, blah. And there was a wee reluctance in, but that's not just down to Steve Clarke, we'll talk about this later. There's a huge reluctance in our culture. You know, we can talk about, oh, guys, this boy's coming through, he's playing really great, he's 22.
Yeah, 21, 22, and you know, you look elsewhere and you're thinking about 16 or 17-year-olds. But yeah, we will come back to that. But in terms of Friday night, where do the goals come from?
Oh, great question that is. Our strength's the middle of the park. McTominay.
McTominay's been outstanding.
Yeah. What a reflection that is. We can't even look at the strikers and think, who's going to score you a goal? So that's what Scotland are.
If you do first goal scorer, you're just going to say McTominay, aren't you? I mean, that's what he does.
I suppose you've got McGinn coming in as well.
McGinn's coming in, and he's got a terrific record as well. He's come back for injury, he's got a terrific record. But I'd still go in form, I'd go for McTominay, because McTominay, many things in football baffle me, but Manchester United and the state they were selling McTominay, and I'm not saying this in hindsight, I think we said it in the programme at the time, just literally, it baffled me why you would want to get rid of McTominay.
I agree.
And going to Naples and doing what he's doing in Naples, he's probably done a wee bit better initially than I expected. But I'm not shocked by how well he's done.
It's interesting when you spoke about Andy Gray and the competition for places for the national team going back. You would have had players plying their trade in the best leagues, particularly down south. Is that what Scotland need? You need players to be going and spreading their wings, being exposed to the cream of European football and playing in top 5 leagues. So obviously we've got a number of players playing down south. But is it a reflection of a really strong national team when you've got players going in?
Absolutely. See, when you see the cycles of a Wales team doing well, a Republic team doing well, it's exactly that. It's a transference of top flight players playing at the highest level, playing for the country. And whether we can get to that level again, it's a question.
Yeah. And we've got to get to that level in certain positions as well.
I was going to say, it's interesting the fact that you have a midfield that is particularly strong in that respect, but then other areas
we've
of
got
the pitch,
midfield, you know, if you talk about English Premier League terms, which English, we can talk about Barcelona, Real Madrid and Bayern Munich and that, but the English Premier League is the best league in the world, and it's simply the best league in the world because it's got the most money in it, and if you're the best player, you go there for the money. You know, okay, you can be a Messi, Xavi and Iniesta and make a bit of money at Barcelona. You know, don't get me wrong, Real Madrid. But generally, players want to play in the EPL because that's where the money is. And we can sit and say, and we could sit and say for some time that we had an English Premier League midfield because Callum McGregor could have played in the English Premier League. McTominay did. McGinn does. Gilmour did. Christie does, and Christie's, you know, really come on in the Premier League, and Armstrong did. So that's just off my head. You've got 6 guys who are English Premier League calibre, undeniable. So we had that. I always think though in international football, they always say one man doesn't make a team. In international football, he does. Just does, right? I mean, always say if Maradona had played for Scotland in 1986, we'd have had a chance of winning that. Look at the Scotland squad, by the way, and put Maradona into it. We would have had a chance. Look at Bale at Wales.
Yeah. A great example.
Bale at Wales, he's a game changer. He was the primary 7 boy playing with the primary 3s.
Ibrahimovic,
Sweden.
You need talisman, you need inspirational figures.
Lewandowski with Poland.
Absolutely.
You can... I mean, Croatia's different because Croatia's got a good level of player. But Modric just lifted them. Perisic, of course, is there, but Modric lifted them above. And if you've got a real talisman for that in international football, my goodness.
Drag the entire team.
Ronaldo with Portugal.
Is there a danger on this kind of run? This might be the last time we'll say before moving on, but is there a danger when you're on a run like this, the 8 games without a win, that there becomes an apathy around the national team?
Apathy's already there. I think if we hadn't sold the tickets prior, there would have been a reaction by the fans not attending the Portugal game. Ronaldo, regardless. I think the apathy exists in the coaching setup. I think there's a man there that believes he's got the right to now wind down his contract. He's earned the right. It's beggars belief he can make that statement in the back of the run that they'd had, and they avoided the scrutiny. I just think it needs a rejuvenation, a bit of energy. A Derek McInnes or somebody to come in and change the whole picture. Steve Clarke turns me off because he's just that kind of personality. It's passé.
Is that fair?
I think it needs. Jock Stein, who wasn't a bad manager, said a great thing. He said after a couple of years, they just stopped listening to you. He says, "Don't fall out of pressing. You don't." He says, "You just get fed up with you. And a freshness in a dressing room. I think it's no great shock that in very top teams all over the world, I know Klopp lasted for a long time at Liverpool, but in top clubs over the years, it's almost like a Conte thing. It's 3 years in and out, and players reacting to that, and then the next coach comes in, and that freshness, just the freshness of training, freshness of ideas. You look at the way McGinn has reacted to Emery at Aston Villa, the way it just changed his game. And McGinn, you will never have any questions about his commitment, never have questions about how he goes about a game and all that. But you'll say, God, I didn't know that I could do this, or I didn't know I could change it.
Almost,
and McGinn's, far on in his career. I don't know. He's in his late 20s, isn't he? Come up for 30. But so, I think a bit of freshness. But I think we've missed the boat in it.
The problem with he's done the job. The SFA are only interested in getting the major finals because of the money that's made in the back.
Exactly,
So listen, I like Steve Clarke. And you're on a 1-to-1 or out with him as he took us out for a meal, a whole gathering of us when he got the job. I liked him. But that doesn't get away from the fact that in a proper business, a proper board. If you digest his last year and a half, he doesn't survive.
No. Another
the
thing
World
is,
Cup
his
is
World
fraught.
Cup is
It's
really,
really
difficult. And the thing about him is, he's a top class coach. He just is. What I'm saying is, his time has come, and there would have been a great time to move on after you saying, listen, you got us to €2, terrific. See what you did. We ran out of steam and all that, but we got us
He
there.
did it Kilmarnock.
He's a top class coach.
He bowed out at the proper time by saying, I've filled the place again.
I've gone where I can.
His curve was up there. I'm sorry, but it's tired now and it's down.
And if you look at everywhere he's gone, he's worked with top guys. He's worked with the Hullets, Mourinho's, Benitez, Dalglish. All these guys say this is a top coach. I mean, these are guys that are not kidding on. So he is. What I would have thought for the World, and this World Cup is going to be, we'll talk about it in later programmes, but the qualification of this Cup is going to be really fraught.
Yeah,
difficult.
I agree. But one manager who's also finds himself with questions hanging over him is David Gray. How long do you think Hibs will stand by David Gray?
I really don't know. I thought at the weekend that was it for him. God bless him. I just said, well, I don't know how he comes back from that. And then people in the know at Hibs, who I was texting to see what the situation was, said, no, he's okay. And they were, 100%. And I was going, I'm kind of surprised at that. What they've got at the moment is, of course, they've got this, not quite in civil war, but it's not far off it, between the two competing factions at the top of the club. And until that's resolved, it's very difficult to form a coherent strategy. And here's the thing about Hibs, and it'll sound like madness to many people, but the manager's position at Hibs isn't the real problem. Now, that sounds,
I don't think it does sound silly, because when you look at the last 3 or 4 years and you look at the succession of managers that have come and gone, it's a bigger issue with the infrastructure of the club.
Exactly that. And the whole thing is, if you had to put it down to something, I would say the big problem is obviously recruitment. They're not getting the right players in terms of fitness for the league. They're not getting the right players in for development. They're just not getting the right players in. There's just in terms of quality, and they are throwing money at it. I mean, there's money going in there. So if somebody had sat me down there and said, "Well, you can't say the problem's Sean Maloney, Jack Ross, Lee Johnston." Blood. I mean, you just say this is. You've either had got a hoodoo on you. You've ran down 3 black cats, or the manager's just isn't the problem here. The head coach isn't the problem.
I think it's a view that's probably shared by quite a lot of Hibs fans. I thought it was really notable at the weekend that they sang David Gray's name, but were jeering Malky Mackay. I thought that was a really, really interesting situation.
When David Gray got appointed, I rolled my eyes, because it was almost preordained that David Gray would get the Hibs job at some point. So the kettle was on for that appointment, and I think it's taken a lot, as you say, a lot of failure to get him into that position, but it's almost like inevitable. Again, with no real experience or pedigree, he's now been asked to go and work with a guy who, above him, has pedigree. I think Malky Mackay's recruitment in the past, his contacts are strong, he's proven it. I think there's a collision there, probably, possibly. I think players abdicating, hiding from the ball at the weekend, it's a manager's responsibility, I believe. I believe that if you get players that shirk, players that can't defend, bring in a defender that just goes and wins the ball and doesn't make calamity after calamity. There's a whole catalogue of problems, but I think the manager, let's be honest, the board can back him, but defeat, he's gone.
Well, if you compare his record, I'm just going to read out here some of the stats. If you compare his record to just recent managers, so he's won 1, drawn 5 and lost 8, he's taken 8 points. Nick McTominay won 4, drew 6 and lost 2, he'd 18 points at this stage and lost his job. Lee Johnston won 5, drew 2, lost 5, 17 points. Sean Maloney won 3, drew 5 and lost 4, was sitting on 14 points at this stage, and Jack Ross had won 5, drawn 3 and lost 4, was sitting on 18. Paul Heckingbottom had won 6, drawn 4 and lost 2, was in 22 points.
Paul
The 8
Heckingbottom
points.
left Hibs and went and managed in the English Premier League. Again, it's decision making. Of course, there's novices there in charge. That's a problem, isn't it, really? They're now trying to address it and make up lost ground. But I think go and bring in a decent defender or 3, because that's been the problem. If you don't have a base, the goalkeeper's a problem, always. Again, it does come down to recruitment, but surely Malky's a man to be given the responsibility to bring in players.
Should David be getting more out of the players that he's got?
Yeah, aye. I mean, but the difficulty there again. This is a guy. I mean, and we've talked about this before. There's been a trend in Scottish football to give players who are coming through in their coaching career big jobs early. You know, just like your head coach of the 18s, your manager of Hearts. You know, your coach number 3, your manager of Aberdeen. Yeah, these are big jobs. I mean, with huge support. I mean, one of the underreported elements of Scottish football is how, for all we can talk about the quality, and the quality is declining. The interest isn't. The interest is like that. I mean, there's a stat the other week there that Aberdeen's sellout the other week was meant that in 4 games they had the biggest attendances that dwarfed Alec Ferguson. In his heyday, didn't have the attendances.
The four successive sellouts at Pittodrie.
And you went, and I travel Scottish football as we all do, and you see, people say there's 18,000 season tickets at Hearts. There's 14,000, 15,000 going to Hibs. There's social media. Everybody's got a blog. There's newspapers dedicating sites to Hibs, to Hearts, to Aberdeen. So the pressure on a young guy who's coming out after doing a really stellar football career, but he's doing under 18 football, putting the cones out there and saying that, and suddenly he's in the line of fire.
Hugh, you've been in the business a long time. He's wearing the look. He's unconvincing in the role. Just doesn't look the good fit. Do you get what I'm saying?
I get.
Can you keep
doing a
changing
similar
it?
kind of problem. He just doesn't look.
Can you keep saying, though, after 3-4 months, we need to change the manager again, you have to change the manager again? At what point do you have to say, right, you need to look at the bigger picture and you need to address everything around the
This
club?
is the point where they're sort of semi-doing that, if you know what I mean. They've said to themselves, they've said, we'll keep the manager and look at... But they really need huge talks about strategy. And the problem is, what you're hearing from the outside is that the 2 interested parties at the top who would be interested, would formulate strategy, are at loggerheads. So that's the problem. Because if they can't come up with a coherent and agreed strategy, well, everything else below it doesn't really matter.
A bigger problem too is the fact that you're sitting at the bottom of the league, and the longer that goes, if you end up becoming even slightly adrift, it can be financial.
Listen, the panic at the club at the moment, and it's reflected in the performances. And players hide from the ball, like gifting away possession time after time. That's your problem, because confidence is eroded. Who's taking responsibility? I also think leaders at the club, discipline's a disgrace. I think your captain is a problem. Good player, Neil, but his discipline's poor. I just think there's something about the team which is ragged and kind of, it's got a look of panic. And you're right, the longer it goes.
Well, the one that's been one of the underreported stories I feel this season is that we're hurtling towards Christmas now. We're in an international break, so we're hurtling towards Christmas, and Hearts and Hibs are at the bottom of the league. And you say to yourself, do you know what?
Yeah, you're not 4 games in.
It's not like, we've got players bedded in and Joe Bloggs is out with an injury and he's suspended, and they're saying, no. This is Christmas coming, right? And there's periods of games over Christmas as well, which will be interesting.
It's always fraught. I mean, you think that period, that 10, 12-day period.
You've got, and you say to yourself, if you come out at the other end of Christmas in January, during a window, and suddenly you know what's going to happen to Ross County during the window, because they've got backing. Cowie, you say, I need a right back, I need a
You've also no respite of a break this year. You're straight through.
Straight through, and you're saying to yourself, who are we up against in terms of relegation? Ross County and St Johnstone. Other teams, there's always one that maybe a Dundee will fall into it because, you know, but, and you say, if you're up against Ross County and St Johnstone, they've been there. They know what this feels like. They know this is the beginning of the season. They probably think to themselves, you know what, if we finish 11th or 10th as a championship, we'll take 11th in a playoff because that's it. So they've been there. And I would be saying, I'd be already, I'm not saying DEFCON 3 at the moment, but if I was at Hibs, I'd say, we'll have to get this sorted pretty quickly, thank you very much.
Yeah, you start to get jittery.
Got to bring belief in. I mean, I spoke to Gareth Ainsworth before the Hearts job get confirmed, and he was talking about how does Edinburgh, the capital city, I know it's not the football capital, but it's a capital city with two huge clubs, fan base, huge. The money going into the clubs, significant. Why is it, I mean, the underachievement over the last 20 years, I know it's beyond that, but the real underachievement's staggering.
I think so as well. And I think the big underachievement for them as well, and I've talked to us a lot, is see what Celtic do in terms of recruitment like this and in terms of player sales. Other clubs can do it. They can't do it in the same level, but they could buy a mini Coon and sell them to
Celtic.
or Sheffield Wednesday, or I mean that model is open. You would have to go down a notch. I'm not saying you can go away to Austria and say there's £3 million for a living, but you can go to places and say there's 500,000 something, and that's the way forward. And both clubs haven't done that.
Sustainable model. You build.
They've not done that.
model.
Aberdeen with Miovski is a great example of doing that. There are players there. I see, go back to Hibs, and I hate to say it, but Scott Brown, Whittaker, blah, Thompson.
When you go back 20 years for
Gary
that
O'Connor,
generation.
Gary Riordan, Tam McManus.
I'm sure you've got a question coming up about this, right? But that's what you do. You work hard.
Again, but that is 20 years ago. I mean, you're talking that would be what, 2001, 2002, really, that clutch of players coming through? Or is that just a generational cycle that sometimes within a club you get that, you know, all of a sudden you get a core?
It was the last embers of boys club football bringing through. It was before academy and pro youth. And now people keep throwing their arms in the air, there's no talent coming through. And they're refusing to accept the reason why. And it is academy football.
That kind of leads us on then, Hugh. Which team is flying the flag, do you think, for young Scottish players coming through? I think Motherwell
the one,
it obviously is very notable at the minute with Lennon Miller and Ewan Wilson. Too, I think Dundee, when you look at Lyle Cameron and Josh Mulligan. But I think less than 10% of players under the age of 23 get a start. How big a problem is that for us?
It is a big problem, and it's one that was being really addressed by a really good report from the SFA. This transition report's a terrific report, and it changed my views on a lot of things, and it changed my perspective on it. So it's one that's been addressed intellectually and in terms of coaching. How will it be implemented in other ways? I don't think it will, because you can come up with all these, and it's a really good report. I really would advise anybody to go, and it's easy to read as well. It's not full of jargon, and they make really good points. But the good points, see, when you come to a Premiership manager is not open to these arguments. Even if you proved, and in some cases they do prove, that bringing young players through doesn't affect team performance or team results and all that. If you take, for example, and I'm just pulling this now, a Stephen Robinson at St Mirren, you know, you should be playing 3 18-year-olds. Stephen Robinson knows he's 3 defeats away from not losing, but for a big crisis.
To be fair, he sat here on this, he sat and said that exact
So
point.
he's not going to. And there's other individual problems, like we talked earlier about Lennon Miller, you know, and you go to, and I've watched him a couple of times, and from what I can see, he's a real good talent. And the interesting thing about him is what he will make a move. What is his next move? And we know the speculation this week is that both Rangers and Celtic are in for him. Celtic, obviously, with their wherewithal, have made, you know, reported to have, you know, made the bigger offer. But if you're sitting down there and you say, well, Lennon Miller, he's sitting, I've got to go, I've got to do something, I've got to develop my career, and you're his agent, and are you saying going to Celtic? Because he's maybe, if Celtic play a 3, as we know, he's at best 5, at worst 6 at the moment. He's not getting a team before
Look at
McGregor, Engels, or Hatate, Bernardo, I would say McCowan, and then you've got him.
If you think even Bernardo, captain of Portugal's
Under
under-21
21s.
team, and is struggling to go in
Get
there
into-
and make a regular...
McCowan, who's a definitive, experienced, good Premiership player, would play for any team in the Premiership, apart from Celtic as a starter, I believe. He's struggling to get in. So a young boy, you saw it with Turnbull. I know there was other reasons with Turnbull. You saw it with Turnbull coming in. It's difficult. I don't know. I think it's. I wouldn't be surprised if Miller and that and these people are thinking about going to another country.
If you obviously were a young player of a different era and a different generation, different time, what would your advice be to someone in that position just now?
A couple of things. Lennon has to. I would go abroad because he's got. Listen, his dexterity, his awareness, his physicality, his timing now. Everything's there set up to go and play France, Italy, somewhere where there's players around him that he can learn the kind of other side of the game. I would definitely go abroad. But I think, going back to the SFA, a brilliant report. But my advice to Andy Gould is detonate a bomb across your whole academies and scrap it. That's something that would be a fundamental revolution, because that's where the problems lie. And you can write thesis on it, where we are. How many different damning reports have we had? Andy Gould, as a football man, you're right, he actually articulates it for the common man to understand it. But act upon it, they're in a position of, they're running the game.
What would you replace academies with? What would you do?
I would have age restrictions on kids that go to academies that are living in Cumbernauld and travelling through to Hearts 4 nights a week on various parts of the country. I would completely obliterate that. There's no requirement for it. I would take the investment that we've used in academies, I would get it back to where we did very, very well, where we ran localised football to allow everybody to participate. So you've not got parents of a kid at Motherwell, Falk or St Johnstone at 10 saying my boy plays with St Johnstone. Get them back playing again. Just play. Because at school, you always knew who the best players were. There's a facility then at school to get school football. I know it's come back to halcyon days, right? But that's where the talent has to be encouraged at school. And I would make sure that there was funding in for boys' clubs, which are becoming obsolete, to allow every kid, because kids mature at different levels. Certainly, I was a late developer, so if I was coming through the now, I would never have played football because I would have been spat out of the system too young, demoralised. All the problems are staring you in the face. Academies have become robotic, self-serving, job-justifying. That's what I would do. That would be my kind of attempt.
I suppose the problem is that clubs are so invested financially now in academies. Is it realistic to say we're going to go and go back the way to where we were? We're going to scrap academies and.
But there is a commercial and capital imperative now that could happen, because academies are facing existential threats. Nothing to do with developing players and how they're developing players, but how with the pounds, pennies. They're saying to themselves, is it worth having an academy? Because
Falkirk did.
Well, maybe Falkirk did. I mean, Motherwell's academy's been doing really well, but if you're imagining, just say that you're at Celtic and you've got the problems with Brexit, which has brought in difficulties in recruitment, and has also meant that the English clubs who have difficulty now in recruitment from Europe are looking at Scotland. So you've already, over at Celtic, you've had maybe... You certainly had one potential generational talent. I mean, we're putting a big burden on him. We're talking about a guy that's already played for Scotland and he's a teenager, has left. You're talking about another 4 or 5 that have gone, 2 to championship clubs, 2 abroad. Now you're talking about the boy, the young kid that's going for under-19s at
Daniel, is it Daniel?
Cumming? He's now saying, well, is he going to sign
Because there's
a
been
deal?
people sniffing around.
And you're going, well, what have we got this academy for now? Because it's supposed to be good development fees, but development fees are hundreds of thousands. I mean,
I was at Rangers training ground a few weeks ago, and they've got big pictures up. Our class of 2022, 23, Rangers B team, under 18s, 25. There's none progressing. Zero, right? I'm Celtic. Like, they're selling players. They're getting players going down to England and elsewhere. There's no evidence at most of the clubs that academies are working because, again, proof's in the pudding. It's about bringing in the money for them or getting them to service your first team.
exactly.
It hasn't happened for how we'll just continue going down the same path.
But how
Yeah, other academies do it though. If you look abroad, if you look to European football, other academies do it with great success.
Yeah, but they've got mostly do at the top level because they've then got, if you're in La Masia or at Bayern Munich or Dortmund, there's less temptation to leave. You know, you're probably
We've also got thriving grassroots across the board, which allows development for every young player. We create elite situation at 10, 11, 12, 13 years of age.
Do we do that too early? Do you write players off too early?
It is a nonsense because you've also got the parent factor. The parent factor putting too much pressure on an 11-year-old boy because he wears a Celtic jersey or a Motherwell jersey. Do you know what? It's fraud because they're kidding these kids on that they've got a future. They don't really. It's that wee fraction. So,
is it fair to say you think sometimes clubs, when you've got that, when you have a youth team, you maybe have one or two standout players that you'll have a youth system and an academy where you think, I've got one that I think is going to make it. I build the team around to service the development really of this one player. That these other 20 kids here are almost there.
It's a numbers game.
To service.
See, when I was young, clubs were allowed to sign 13 S forms, and say you wanted to sign another one, you'd have to let one of them go. Now, I'm not saying you scrap academies across the boards, right? I'm saying once you get to 15, then there's a time to go and step up, right? But it's a numbers game. You've got far too many kids. The majority, the mass majority, will never kick a senior football. And I just think you have to try and make it kind of grassroots for all and not make it elite enjoyment. And we've lost track with all these things.
And it's got a further effect. I mean, we're sitting here talking about elite football because that's our job, but it's got a further effect that what you do is you're disillusioning 99.9% of, and we're talking about men's football, of your boys. You're telling them at 15 you're failures, and you should see the dropout from that. See, between 15 and 19.
11 and 12 are failures.
But even between 15 and 19, you've got all these...
The dropout's fantastic.
I mean,
absolutely.
you know, if you talk about... If you go to what I would call a junior club or an amateur club, and they say, we can't get players. And you say, well, there's about 300 doing at that academy, but once they pack that in, they get, oh, that's it, I'm no good at football, going to... There's other things.
You close the door.
There's social things, and there's other things. But the amount of dropout is huge.
Right.
What's the solution? Where is it?
We spoke earlier about the lack of real talisman quality, that kind of real player that you can build a team and inspires it. Campsie Blackwatch, which should have been... That was the canary in the mine. A club...
Some chapel amateurs as well.
If you look and really analyse the statistics, amateur clubs and boys clubs folding, junior clubs folding, what it does, it signals something's wrong.
It's all part of a wider social context though, isn't it, when you think about that?
I believe that they should have some kind of policy where you have to be able to train within a radius of your local place. I know parents that struggle. They're putting financial things and neglecting things to get their kid through because they think their kid at 12 is going to go and play with Hearts. And they're making travelling ridiculous distances every single night. That's got to stop. I think you've got to barrier a certain age where you cannot be a 12-year-old kid doing that night after night to kid them on that they're going to be footballers, but more like the parents as well.
Would you keep the system just now for the likes of Celtic and Rangers where you take, and even the SFA's own performance skills, where you're going to high school at 11, 12?
I would shut them all down. I would redirect that funds into try to regenerate grassroots to allow all kids to play, because these kids are not quality. It's numbers. It's not quality. The only way to engender quality is to allow all kids to play, and then you start, once they get to 14, 15, then you start identifying who's the best. You can teach kids how to pass footballs at 14 and 15, but you can't teach them how to dribble. It has to become part of your game when you're 9, 10, coming through and enjoying it. Go to academies, the kids are not enjoying it. It's pressure. I just think the whole direction of it's wrong.
Do you think it's too serious?
It's massive.
Too early? I remember one
That's
of...
not sport, and it's kids try to prove to their mum and dad that they're going to be playing in that responsibility. Take that away from them. Just let kids go and play the way they used to, when we used to create the best.
How, if you had one thing to do for youth football, what would it be?
Oh goodness! One thing to do for youth football, I would try, and this is a more a cultural thing. I would try to loosen it up. I try to concentrate completely on participation. I try to concentrate completely on coaching making it very clear that the worst wee kids that are coming in were getting the same coaching as the top kids to make it egalitarian at that level, and then just allow the process to drift through the years. And that might sound daft, but that's how we got Dalglish, Jimmy Johnson, Dave Mackay and Dennis Law, because they were just, there was just people playing a lot of football without, I'm at Motherwell when I'm 10 or at 8, or Rangers or Celtic have phoned me up to come to the, because I'm 7 and things like that. Have a more egalitarian thing, but it's going to be very, very difficult because it is a commercial enterprise at the end of the day.
Hugh, I spoke to Craig Halkett about this, and he was at Rangers when we won the Youth Cup. Now, that was a very esteemed youth team, and the amount of money that was put into those kids to come through, it's massive money. How many players, this is a couple of years ago, how many players are still playing from the squad that won the Youth Cup with Rangers that year that Craig's talking about? It's only 2.
Wow, a squad of 18.
Yeah, so again, it's evidence. Evidence something's wrong.
And even in England, where I think the figures for English
But
academies...
it's brutal.
it's
I mean,
at
the whole thing, I mean,
0.1%.
this is the most, I mean, it's why I once talked to an English Premier League footballer this was about 10 years ago, and when the money was exploding, it was always good. And there was reports he was on 70 grand a week. And that would be 10 years ago. And I said, well, that's not a bad thing. He said, no, I deserve it. And he says, how? He says, because we were walking through this town that he was brought up. He said, many people around about here are playing in the English Premier League. Many people in this county are playing in the English League. Many players in this country are playing in the English Premier League. He says, it's brutal. Do you know how hard it is to get from playing for Joe Blogg's boys club at 12, being the best player in that? Then you've got to be the best player at the academy. You've got to be the best player at the provincial club. Then you've got to be the best player in the country. And then you might get a chance at the Premier League. It's brutal. And you're never going to change that. Football will, to the day it ends, will be a brutal sport. A sport, as I always say, Darwinian, where you can shake the hand of... it doesn't even have to be a Wayne Rooney, but you can shake the hands of a Ryan Christie. And you see how many players did Ryan Christie have to come through to play for Bournemouth? Hundreds.
Here's Andy Gill's problem as well. He needs academies. He needs... Scottish football needs academies, the jobs. Everyone's a guru. He is trying to pilot something that's going to improve, but it means scrapping things. And Scotland doesn't do change well. They'll put their head in the sand and it'll be the same problems in 5 years' time. And Andy Gould probably knows that. I'm sure he knows it. That the problem is trying to go and tell these I know coaches that coach with SFA academies, and it's a joke.
Well, speaking of change, should the SPFL explore a game in the States, as we've heard this week?
Well, they shouldn't, but they will. I mean, and it's going to happen, and it's going to, and it'll happen with the English Premier League. And the reason it'll happen is because it makes commercial sense. It's as simple as that. What you've got now is, see if you see the NFL, which is probably, that and the English Premier League would be the two great sporting franchises in the world. Funnily enough, English Premier League probably dwarfs it in terms of, well, does dwarf it in terms of worldwide television deals. But the NFL at the moment, they're sitting there talking about taking 6 of their games all over the world. England, probably Central Europe, Germany, which they did last year, certainly Asia, and definitely the Middle East. Definitely the Middle East. Because the Middle East's got all this big infrastructure. You saw what Qatar did to get the World Cup. You see what Saudi is going to do the World Cup. And they're not building that for a tournament every 4 years. They're building that to it. And if you can say to leagues that not only does it will give you top money for this, but it increases your branding throughout the world, which it does, it just does, it'll happen. It'll happen. And people will go on it. I mean, it was nearly happened with Celtic Dundee some time ago. But I think it'll happen. But it'll happen on the back of NFL and EPL. And hey, listen, do you think if somebody says to you Champions League final, see somebody says to me the Champions League final is going to be in Doha, would you be shocked?
No, not at all. Not at all. It's
That's brilliant.
But would you?
maybe not in, like not in the next season or two, but it's coming down the line.
If somebody says
It's
to
coming
you,
down the track.
somebody said to you, you know, we're going to play. Even some as ludicrous as this, we're going to play the semi-finals of the Euros in Riyadh. You go, what? Don't rule it out, because it's that. It's that's what it's all about.
It's always been used when they brought the NFL to London, but it sold.
Aye.
Listen, I don't. You're great stats and informed about it. I'm in your camp. Nothing would surprise me. Why not?
If it's got a monetary value, this is professional sport. The clue is in the word professional, right? These guys are not sort of sitting down there tearing their heads out about tradition and all. You saw it with the European Super League. Do you think that anybody at Fenway Group, who's probably the smartest, I think they're the smartest sporting group in the world, right? And they're in baseball and they're in football and they've got Liverpool. I think at Fenway Group they were bothered about tradition with the Premier League, with Liverpool going into a Super League and throwing away the. No, they were saying that this makes incredible commercial success. And the thing about it, the thing about it is people say, oh, it gets season ticket holders cheesed up. The big clubs at Liverpool and that, they actually, if you actually put a gun to head, they would say, we don't want season ticket holders. We don't want one season ticket holder. Season ticket holders cost us money. Yeah. Because if you've ever tried to get a ticket for English Premier League, they could sell out. Mm-hmm. That's why they're building it. Season ticket holders are getting it dirt cheap. They turn up every week and they pay a pie and a bovril. If you've got football tourism, you sell out 60,000. But the guy sitting there, the guy sitting there is spending 150 quid in the club. He's buying a strip
and he's buying
a scarf. He's taking a mug back to his mate, and he's doing it that one day. Mm-hmm. And this next week there's another guy doing the exact same. It's
basically the Disneyland of football.
I went down to Spurs for a game. I got invited down for a game, and I just went about. I came out with my son. I said, "We just spent 200 quid there. Mm-hmm. We got everything for free. We were invited by somebody because you went to the club shop. If you're a season ticket holder, many times you go to the club shop before Christmas, start of the season. Mm-hmm. It's going to make sense. It's why
I think if you get in a time machine and go down 10 years down the road, our conversation's obsolete. It's commonplace. By the way, Scottish football. There's the fans, if they want to travel to watch Celtic and Rangers, may have to travel further than they think.
Is it an idea, though, just to enhance the game, to take it on the road?
I don't. It enhances it commercially and visibility. Does it? It doesn't enhance it for the players because they've got more recovery time. It wouldn't enhance it for the indigenous fan because they'll suddenly, the boy that's got his Celtic or Rangers season ticket suddenly seen that the game against Dundee's in Philadelphia. You know, I mean,
Do you not think, even in a European sense, this season, certainly I've got pals that were going to go and travel to Greece to watch Rangers. It's exhausting financially for them. There's too many games. So, is it
Hard to pick and choose in.
but Gordon, I think, see the punter, the Scottish football punter is probably the most underrated punter in the world, because we know the stats about we're the best supported clubs in
Hibs.
and you go there and you go down. I go down to Capello on a Friday night. The game's on the telly. You can sit in your house and turn it on. And it's cold, and it's a Friday night, and it's damp.
It's always raining in Capello.
And there's 15.
There's a wee cloud hovers above.
Capello's my least favourite ground to work at.
But it's one of my best grounds to visit for now, because I don't
Never get Wi-Fi.
But there's 1,500 people there. You go to Kirkintilloch Rob Roy for a game. I went to Kirkintilloch Rob Roy, middle of the opening stadium. 1,000 people.
Incredible. How many fans do you think how many home fans were at the Falkirk game on Saturday?
Well, they would have 5,000, 6,000. They're selling. I mean, you go to Falkirk via United and there's 7,500. You go to Falkirk and Dunfermline, you can't get a ticket. It's a sellout.
Yeah.
I mean, Scottish football has got this real cultural and pulling. I was over in Dortmund, and I don't know how many Celtic fans there was there, but there was more Celtic fans there than went to the game.
Yeah, just without a ticket, just there for the
So they're
experience, travelling and numbers.
Spending best part of $1,000. You know, when you take in your hotel, your flight,
Time off work.
your bevy, and not even getting the game.
Incredible. Anyway, we always like a list. We like our top 11. So quite interesting. This week we've got a wee twist it. So the best 11, the best starting 11 in the league just now, out with Celtic.
Out with Celtic?
Out with Celtic. So take Celtic out of it. So we've got a kind of 4-4-2 we've gone with.
So you put Butland in goal.
Mitov,
Butland. Yeah, that's a good shout. You'd go for Mitov, no?
Probably.
Yep. Mitov's a good shout. And then at full back, Devlin, even though he was pummeled at Hampden. I would go.
Suter.
Suter's had a good season. He did, and who else at centre back? I wouldn't know who else at centre. Let me think. Who's had a really good season at centre back? Finley's injured.
I've got Finley.
I like Finley.
Let's assume he's fit.
If he's fit, I like Finley. Left back's interesting. Hefty would get a few votes from Rangers fans, although he's been in and out.
He's ran away from the ball a wee bit for that.
Well, that was true, I forgot about that.
Mackenzie, I'm going
Mackenzie,
Go for that.
Yeah, quite happy with the back line?
Absolutely.
Right, okay.
Finley, how many natural left-sided players?
Exactly.
Tierney.
Yep.
Certainly if you go in the last month or two, yeah.
Right, inside Nielsen.
100%.
Definitely.
He's been great.
Definitely. Even though he's got huge flaws, absolutely huge flaws, he knows how to cover them up. Half the time, and that's why he's still playing, because he knows he's covering up because he can pull a jersey, and I quite like all of that.
Miller.
Yeah.
The best young talent I've seen, certainly in the last 10 years, and I think he's got everything, and heading for the very top.
Yeah, I think that was our first name in the team sheet, wasn't it? Kiskinnon.
Yep.
Again, is that natural width? Yeah, go for that.
Right, who are you going as your two front guys?
Well, that's a question, isn't it?
It's tough up top. It all depends if you want to just go down the St Johnstone route. They've run with the guys that they've got up top.
Campioca.
Aye, because I'd be leaning towards him. The great thing is, you'd have Shankland up, but you wouldn't have him this season. He's been poor this season. I'd go. Who else? Who to?
I only know the answer because I'm reading it.
Kyle Vassell's my other one.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, definitely. Of course, yeah. I watched him against
First 45
first
minutes, even off at half time.
and that, I mean, actually, McKinsey's substitution was the correct one, but not only for the injury, but for almost like for like. But Vassell was terrific.
He was.
So we've got
It
a
was a good
consensus
season.
there,
I think
He's a good player.
He looks more athletic this season. I think he looks.
He played in the game, the reverse fixture against Celtic, which Celtic won very easily. He had a good game in that game as well.
He does exactly what Hibs need at the moment, somebody to go and assume responsibility,
Holds the ball.
leadership, identifies with the club. He's almost become like the commandments kind of guy, right? And
He speaks well.
absolutely.
Speaks well.
I mean, that's your team basically. We've read it, isn't it?
Yes, no dissenting voices this week. Normally have.
No, I wouldn't dissent much from there. And we agreed on stuff anonymously. I didn't see the team, so we did agree on stuff anonymously.
Okay, well, that's all we've got time for this week. Thank you to Gordon and thank you to Hugh. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel and download our app. But thank you for listening and thank you for watching.